Hey all, thanks for joining. So today I'm going to go through using Pester tests and obtaining test cases dynamically through a config file or a data source. I'm going to use a CSV as the data source to provide data for the test case itself. We had a need to check permissions on folders, the access rights and audit rights, and we wanted to be able to just provide easy modifiable source of data without having to adjust the test to accommodate changes to what we're actually checking, additions and removal. Um, and CSV or any other data source might be a little bit easier to modify or update outside of the code. So to get started here, I'm just going to create a folder. We'll call it ACL and a couple files, one being CSV and one being just the script for the test. Let's see here. Oh, you can see here I was testing one earlier, but let's clear that. So to build out the CSV, I'm just going to use a few of the properties that are returned by the getACL command in Windows. Stand by here, let me relaunch. One of these requires admin permissions. Alright, so we'll do git ACL attack audit and apply that to path. I just created a temp folder on my machine. Pipe that. So on ctemp, this is the property values that are returned by getACL. It's a built-in command, comes with Windows 10, Server 2016, and probably later at this point. But you can see here there's a audit property and access property. So for both of those, they each have a .NET class that are assigned to it, and they're actually rules. One's an audit rule, and the other type is a access rule. So these are just an array of those rules. So if we expand out one of those, you can see these are all the permission rules applied to the folder. So for instance on ctemp, built-in administrators would have full control, it's inherited, and it's allow for the access control type. So what I'm going to do is start building the CSV using some of these properties so that we can then later introduce those into our tests. We also built a tool, or I had built it to just actually grab these objects or properties from the folders that you point the tool at and then build the CSV for you, but I'm just going to go ahead and type it out here today. It should take a few minutes, so stand by and bear with me. So audit flags isn't displayed here, but that's one that is used by um, the audit rules. So you can see here audit flags, and the rest are the same. Yeah, I think that should be good for demonstration. Yeah. So from that, we'll actually just start filling in the values for these. So I'm just going to use the class name for the rule types. Seems easy enough to understand what that might be then. And we need file system rights, so we'll just take these for administrator. And you can create this in Excel. I just happen to be doing it by hand a long way. Okay, so that's one, and we'll do an audit rule, same idea. So these will actually be same. I'm not going to be checking the owner for audit rules. Doesn't matter if you leave it in there, I suppose, but don't want to include it as a check. So after owner, file system rights. And we don't have access control type, we have audit flags instead, so we'll leave a gap here as well. Okay. So there's our CSV file. So this will be providing the values for the Pester test. So I'm just going to add a few things here, some requires. I usually just assume versioning for PowerShell is at least 5, 1, and also requires run as administrator. Okay, so let's get our configuration. Get, import, I believe, CSV, yeah. Path, PS, script, root. Right, so that should give us our config for each. So we're just going to loop through each line on the values. I suppose that could be row as well. Either way. Then what we want to do is also create a hash table. So with Pester tests, the test cases takes in an array of a dictionary. So you can use a hash table to do that. So I'm also going to use an array list just because it's easy to add objects to it. So using namespace is kind of similar to anything else that you write in .NET. This just happens to be how you do it in PowerShell. If you've programmed in C#, you kind of do the same thing to include other libraries or namespaces for classes or classes or libraries in general. So now we can do an array list. Again, this is similar to, I guess, C#, but this would be equivalent to new object type name, and then system.collections.arraylist. I just happen to like the shorthand syntax for it. Looks a little cleaner. Reminds me of programming with C#. So now we have an array list. We want to, from the row, since it's a PowerShell object, just obtain the properties. So we can grab the name and value. So they come out as like name value pairs, basically from import CSV. And we'll also, on each row, create a hash set. So we can just have a dictionary format for the test cases. So shorthand, create new hash set. And then we're going to loop again for each property in row dot ps. I think that's right. And we're going to do hash set dot add property name and value. The out null here is just going to eat up the integer that's returned. It returns the count of the array after you add an object to it to an array list. So we'll just do out null. Other way you can do that is void. So this is like typecasting in PowerShell. I do like out null here. It's a little more clear for other PowerShell users. Right, so we'll go ahead and just see where we're at now. Run this, see what we got. So far, it looks good, I suppose. That should work. That should give us everything that we need. So let's describe our Pester test. This is just using a built-in version of Pester. So get module list available. Just quickly output the version I'm using. Right, so Pester 3.4. There's a lot later versions of this, and syntax might vary, but when I use Pester, I currently just have the need to use the built-in version on our systems. So we're going to say it, and we'll just start providing some of this information here. Again, these are just the property names or header values for our CSV. And we're also going to do audit flags as well. I just like pairing these up just because one's blank when the other isn't. So it'll just look pretty consistent when it goes through. And then we will provide test cases. Oops. Sorry, array list. And then we will define the body here and provide the parameters. I do have these typed up. I'm going to save a little bit of time and copy and paste. Yep. Okay. And then we're going to define the body for our tests. So here we will get ACL, oops, path. And you do want to provide audit. Then ACL should not be null. It's just making sure that our action silently continue. Not sure if that actually works, but we'll give it a go. So now we want to check to see if the rule type is a file system rule or a audit rule. So we can grab the appropriate object. If, let's say rule type equals so we only have two, we can just use an if statement. And basically we want to select the first rule that matches a few of these identifiers. So probably file system rights, access control type, and identity reference. So we'll call this rule acl.access, where the object file system rights equals I think that should be plenty. And we'll do the same thing down here. change this to audit flags. Yeah, that should give us a rule that we can then check the other properties. We can also check here. ACL.owner should be owner should be fine. And we can even check the audit flags here. And the access control type here. Just to save if statements. Don't think order really matters, just matching does. Then we can check the rest of them. Right. I think that should be it. Looks relatively good. Let's get some space here. Yeah, let's give it a go. See what happens. Expected for allow should be true. Full control, access control type. Right. Audit flags. I think I forgot a column there for audit flags. So let's give it a go again. See if that cleared anything else. Up. First one succeeded. Second one did not. So we are checking owner only if the rule type is audit. Problem there. There we go. So a few typos, no big deal. If you want to build out your CSV in Excel, that can be done as well. Again, just make sure that the values are quoted. If you're using Microsoft Excel, it does that by default if you put quoted values or text values in one of the fields. Hope that helped. This was useful for me. I'll probably post this on GitHub and put a link in the description. But have a good day.